Okay, we're going to continue our discussion on functions and formulas. Just a little side note, when I create these videos, I upload them to YouTube. I'm limited to 15 minutes. I was getting close to 15 minutes, and that was a good spot to stop. So we talked about creating functions using the sum function, average, maximum, minimum. And I'll show you where you can also find those. So I'm going to click on D24, and I'm going to go up to the editing box, and I'm going to click this little down arrow. And you will see, oops, I lost it. There we go. You will see some functions that actually we've used. So if we just click on the sum function, and you'll notice that Excel is trying to range out the cells, and it's pretty accurate. But you'll notice I don't need D23. It's not going to hurt anything, but I want to be a little more specific. So I'm just going to make sure that it just selects the ones that I need, and then I'll hit enter. You'll notice I delete that the icon actually has two parts to it. You're going to find that throughout Excel. So in this instance, we have two. Oops, let me start that there. We have two parts to this icon. If I click the right side, that little down arrow, that gives me a list. If I click the actual icon itself, it will implement that. So basically, in this one, it's the Greek letter sigma, which is for sum. So if I click it once, you'll see that it creates my range for me. And so at this point, I can then just swipe it through, and I can hit enter. Now for averages, I can again go up to the sum function here, and I can click the little down arrow, and I can do averages. Now I want you to notice something. The averages just pick up the previous number. Now if I did not have that row, that blank row 23, it would have gone from the totals all the way up. But either way, you do want to pay attention when you're using functions, especially when they kind of like help you. You want to make sure that they're helping properly. So I want to make sure that I do just select these values, and I'll hit enter. I want to do maximum. So again, I can go back up here, and I can find max. Same thing, it just picks up until it hits a blank row. So I want to just select those cells, and I'll hit enter. And I'll do the last one for min. Notice it picked up the 3 before it. We don't want that. We want these. And then I'll hit enter. Now there's one thing I want you to be aware of when working with averages. I'm going to create a new quick little worksheet here. And I was going to type in some values. We'll do 10, 25, 35, and 40. And I'm going to have Excel do an average. So I'm going to hit equal average, and I'm going to select those items. So I have an average of 27.5. Now let's say I go over here to A35, or should be A5, the value 35, and I just type in 0. Now the average now should go down. You'll notice it goes to 18.75. Now here's what I want you to pay attention to. I'm going to go back to A5, and I'm going to delete that value. So now it's empty. And you'll see that it actually did the average, but it only averaged the values. So it averaged 10. So if I do a quick little formula here, I can do 10 plus 25 plus 40 divided by 3. And that gives me my 25. So it's important when working with average to recognize that if something has a value of 0, then it will be included in the average. If it's a blank cell, then average will just ignore it. It just figures, okay, there's no value there, I'll just skip it. Now, if I were to do a basic formula, let's say I take the contents of A3 and I multiply it by the contents of A5, and I hit enter, you'll see that's going to come up with 0. So Excel is really treating that cell in two ways. If you're using the average function, then it basically any blank cell will be considered no value, so it'll skip it. If you're using it in a formula, or for instance, not that it really makes sense with sum, then it can be considered 0. So something to be aware of when you're working with averages. So if I go back to formulas, so let's say I take the value C28, and I'm going to type in 0, and you'll notice that the minimum is going to be 0. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. So now I'm going to delete it. I'm kind of curious what's going to happen with that minimum. So I'm going to hit delete, and notice it didn't change. So again, as it did with average, with max and min, any values that are empty, any cells that are empty, will not be included in any of the calculations with those 3 functions. All right, so now I'm going to take this, and I want to bring these over. Now, one way I can do that is just simply by highlighting those first 4, and then using the little square in the lower right-hand corner, I can just drag it across. But I'm going to undo this. Another way I can do this to make it a little simpler is simply double-click that. And if I double-click it, it doesn't do anything. Oh boy. Well, let me bring this across. It really didn't know what to do. So I'm going to show you where you'd actually see it. I'm going to go to this balanced ode, and I'm going to delete the ones that we had copied down. And notice that the values change here. So in this instance, we can double click and it will fill it in. It didn't know how to handle it when I went across. All right, now here we got a couple of issues here. You'll notice that when I copied it across, it brought over the formatting, which is right for amount due and discount rate and cash payment and balance owed, but column H is a percent. Well, $1 is not a percent. So we're going to have to change those formats. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of these cells, and I'm going to go up to the number group, and I'm going to click on the percent sign. You could also go up here to the list, and I could choose percent. Where is it? There it is. Now notice, I'm going to undo that. If I go up to and use the percent symbol, you'll see that it gives you no decimal places. Okay, so let me do that again. You'll notice these are a bunch of decimals. These have 2 decimals. These are just fill the line or fill the cell up. So if I click the icon itself, it gives me the percent with no decimal. But notice if I go and choose it from the list, you will see that the example here is showing you that it's going to be 2 decimals, which is really what we want. So either way works. So I'm going to click on that one. You'll see everything is 2 decimals. But let's say that you had clicked on the percent icon, knowing it's only going to give you just the whole number. But we're not out of luck, because below it you have 2 options here. The first option is to increase the decimal place. So I can just increase that as much as I want, or I can decrease it. So I'm going to increase it so I have 2 decimal places. So multiple ways of doing things. Just use the method that works best for you. Notice there's nothing here in H23, so it doesn't format it. But if I type in a value, then it will be formatted that way. But that's a blank row, so I'll get rid of that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight those values. And currently, it is set up for currency, and that is just basically pulled from this. Where is it? That's right there. It's from that list. But there's a second option, which is accounting, and you can either choose it from the list, or you can click the icon here. If I click that icon, I want you to notice what happens with the dollar signs. You'll see that they all line up now on the left-hand side. So when you're doing your homework, if the assignment says set for currency, then you want to come up here to the pull-down menu and you want to choose currency. If it says to use the accounting format, you can either choose it from the list, or I can just choose the icon. Notice this icon also has multiple options. So if I click the down arrow, I could then set it for the English pound, the euro, the Chinese, and then there's more accounting formats if you need. But here in the United States, we use the dollar sign. So it's really your personal preference as to which you use. I normally use currency, but there's nothing right or wrong on what number formatting that you are currently using. So in this video, we talked, or these actually last two videos, we talked about working with functions, and we're working with formulas and doing a little bit of formatting. In the next video, we're going to continue with this example, this worksheet, and we're going to do some actual formatting. So we'll be back there for the third video.